Great. All right. Well, hello, everyone. It's 11 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Happy Friday. Welcome to our first ever Student Ambassador Symposium. I'm Ashley with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, Program Manager for Special Projects, one of which is co-managing our Student Ambassador Program, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute or two. A few housekeeping items to start. This is a meeting style Zoom, so different than a webinar style Zoom, we encourage you all to keep your videos on so that our interns feel like they're actually presenting in front of a group of engaged and interested people. And of course, please keep your mics muted if you're not actively speaking. We'll open up for Q&A at the very end, at which time we'll encourage you to voice your questions and comments to our interns, our member host organizations, and or staff. And you're welcome to put them in the chat as well. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have an action-packed agenda consisting mostly of lightning style presentations by our interns, as well as a few opening remarks from our member host organizations. But first, a few words of welcome from our president and CEO, Kate Roberts. Kate, over to you.
Hey, Ashley, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm just so excited about this program. It, 6 years ago, it was just this little kernel of an idea. Wouldn't it be cool if? And then to see how far this program has come and all the great work that's being done by you guys, I'm just so stoked, so grateful that Ashley and Haley both, but have been really doing so much work to make this program happen. So grateful for you guys for being willing to be a student ambassador, and of course to our members for hosting you guys and for being part of this whole effort to give you guys really wonderful work experience while helping our members do really important work that they need done. So it's just such a win-win, and I'm so proud of the program, so proud of you all. I'm sorry I can't be here for the rest of the program. I'm actually off today, but wanted to make sure to zoom in here real quickly just to share my excitement for your work, and I can't wait to watch the recording and see all the fantastic things you guys are doing. So gratitude, gratitude. Thank you so much, and thanks, Ashley, for letting me share that little bit of just welcome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kate. We're super grateful for your leadership and your support. And yes, we know we can't stay very long. Thanks for being with us here today to welcome the group on your day off. Hopefully you enjoy your weekend, and we'll move on to the next slide. Thanks so much, Kate. So just to give you an idea, we launched our Student Ambassador Program in the spring of 2019 with the intent to provide much needed talent development in our region, networking opportunities, and real world work experience that would essentially supplement a student's or recent graduates' academic studies. We started with our workforce development initiative and have since expanded it across all our initiatives, and more recently as a value add to our members, where we matched students based on these minimal requirements listed here and coupled their academic and professional interests with an MBEP initiative or MBEP member staff with a need for technical assistance, and with someone who actually had the bandwidth and interest in managing one or more interns. And this became even more important when the pandemic hit, which increased unemployment rates and budget cuts and hiring freezes. Also, just to note, diversity, equity, and inclusion lies at the center of our program. We pretty much operate on an open door policy and encourage all students to apply, especially first generation or students with no work experience, to give them a boost. Next slide. There are numerous benefits for being an intern or hosting one. I won't go through this entire list, but as you can see here, interns are really learning the realities of working in an industry they think they're interested in and are studying by way of immersion, right? Whether in person or remote, they're learning how to be flexible, adaptable, how to communicate, project manage, etc. It really helps them explore and determine a career path, expands their professional portfolio, gives them competitive edge in the market, and most importantly, it allows them to feel engaged and connected to their local communities off campus while gaining a suite of transferable skills. And we can say the same for employers, right? It gives them an opportunity to give back, support, and mentor our students. It strengthens their relationships with local institutions and allows them to leverage academic research or pilot new projects. It could even increase productivity and offer management opportunities to mid-level staff. And it supports the overall development of a robust local talent pool of trained candidates. In our case, we offer a flexible remote remote work schedule with the opportunity to earn academic credit, work study where possible, and or a stipend upon completion. We recognize our interns on our website and communications and at events. We provide references, mentorship, and tons of professional development opportunities, from workshops and networking to conducting informational interviews and attending our conferences for free. Also, just so you know, the kinds of work projects our interns have worked on in the past include everything from community outreach and engagement, content creation, social media, grant writing, project management, data analysis, and research. Next slide, please. And so without further ado, we've hosted over 25 interns to date, and this is our largest, most diverse cohort, about half of whom will be presenting today. You can head to our ambassador bio page to learn more about each one. And our symposium today is an exciting, much anticipated opportunity for interns and member host organizations to report out on their projects and to share some key highlights and takeaways with the rest of our MBEP member community. It's also an opportunity for our workforce development initiative to tell you about the free resources we offer to employers to engage with local interns. Next slide. And lastly, we gratefully acknowledge the time and effort our members and internal initiatives put into hosting some of our ambassadors: the City of Santa Cruz, Driscoll's, our housing initiative, the County of Monterey, and the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. Let's see, next slide, please. And so now we'll hear directly from our member project supervisors and the interns they worked with. First up, we have Dr. Tiffany Wise-West, Climate and Sustainability Program Manager for the City of Santa Cruz, who will say a few words and introduce her interns, Justin and Grant. Tiffany?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here today. I can't tell you how phenomenal my experience has been with these two MBEP ambassadors over the past several months. And it's truly amazing the amount they've been able to accomplish. So just to tell you really briefly, just to cue it up for them and introduce them, and they can talk more about what they've done. The City of Santa Cruz has both a climate adaptation initiative, most recently our Resilient Coast Santa Cruz coastal sea level rise planning project. And we also have our climate action plan 2030 development project that's happening right now and is just starting, actually. That has a very strong green economy focus, which is a nexus with our interim recovery plan that has a workforce development initiative and an overarching principle of sustainability, green economy, and equity. And so both of these MBEP ambassadors have been helping with different facets of both of those projects with a particular focus that they each have taken. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and, well, before I introduce them, I do want to say how this really helps the City of Santa Cruz is that I'm basically a program of one, right? Like at any one time I might have some help, whether it's a halftime Civic Spark Fellow or various interns. And this really helped increase our capacity over the past 3 months to get some things done that really we could not have gotten done otherwise. So I just, again, I want to attest to the quality of the skills and the attitudes that these folks bring to this work and how much enormously it's helped. And I hope that they feel that they've gotten some exposure to some interesting topics and how local government works. So with that, I will introduce our first MBEP ambassador, and that's Justin Scherer, who goes to Cal Poly. He's a grad student there. And Ashley, should I just go ahead and introduce Justin, or should I introduce Grant also and let Justin talk first? How did you want me to do that?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and have Justin share now, and he'll just go ahead and pass the baton to Grant.
Okay, and then we have Grant Simmons also, who I want to say I knew in a past life. I taught him, I think, seventh grade math. Okay, Justin.
Thanks, Tiffany.
How's it going, everyone? So I'm Justin. So first off, if there's anything that interests you with any of the work that we're doing, feel free to reach out to any of us. Our emails are in the last slide. So what I was able to help out with the City of Santa Cruz. So number one, I was climate action plan tech assist, as well as green economy and green jobs research, where I did research and analysis. Next slide. So the first piece I kind of jumped into was this community engagement survey. So the first part of the climate action plan, and you can see that there on the right, there you see all the little bubbles. So the first part is to engage with the community and see what they want and see what their priorities are, and see, I guess, who's interested, what the demographics are. And so, as Tiffany said, a lot of this is about equity and making sure that we can create a climate action plan that's going to help everybody in the community, not just a few. And so a lot of what I was doing is, so being able to quantify, a lot of it was binary data and some of it was qualitative, and making sure that it was digestible and it was very easy to analyze. And so you can see there in the bottom, there's a little arrow pointed to where you can find it on the website, and I also have a link to it here on the slide, but it's available to the public. So if you want to see anything about the community engagement, it is going to be public. And so that was a big priority there. Next slide. And so here's just some examples of what you're going to see there when you click on the data. So like I said, equity is a big priority for this. So being able to first identify these, the demographics, and second off, seeing like what their interests are, if they want to be in these working groups and actually be hands-on in the whole process, either be in the green economy piece, which is where I kind of was doing a lot more work, or if just mean anything. So there's a lot of different aspects to the whole climate action plan. Next slide. So the big chunk of what I was helping Tiffany and the City of Santa Cruz with was this green economy piece. So coming out of COVID, or I guess going through it, you saw a big economic downturn in basically every community, including Santa Cruz. And so the idea with the green economy is to be able to simulate the economy through jobs that are going to be green, and also jobs that are going to help underrepresented populations in the process. And so, as great as that sounds, you do have to have the right data and, have the right information for that. So what I was doing is reviewing a lot of these documents, a lot of plans that were created, and, being able to do it in a way that's going to, have sustainable jobs that are also green. And so, there in the bottom right, you can see this is one of them, one of these plans. So it's the whole idea of the high road approach. And so that's really the road that Santa Cruz is looking to take. And so a lot of it also is being able to analyze what sectors are going to be targeted and like where we want to help reinforce and develop the workforce there. And, so in the bottom, you can kind of see some of the trends. I think this is for Santa Cruz County. And so, you can see, construction going up, and, so that's just an example of something where it's like, okay, this is where some of the trends are. And so on top of that, you're going to see also, what are the demographics of people, let's say in construction? Because if we're going to just reinforce this one industry, is it going to be advantageous for those that already have resources, or are we going to have to make sure to develop these industries and in a way that's going to be equitable? Next slide. So another piece that I was able to do is this green jobs analysis. So, I was looking at BLS, so Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have these huge databases of basically anything that you want to find out as far as, the workforce, anything with labor. So kind of sifted through that and matched up the SOC and OCC codes between BLS and ONET. So ONET just basically breaks down the industries in between, like this is where the green jobs are, there's green emerging jobs here. And so I was able to kind of cross-examine and find which ones are going to be, which ones are currently in Santa Cruz, where the opportunities are, where the industries are really strong in Santa Cruz, and actually finding the total number of green jobs that there are. So was able to find that for 2019 and 2020. And so, this will be used to be able to see what the green economy or the impact of the green economy is going to be. So this will be passed on to the economists on the project down the road. Next slide. And so I would say one of the biggest things is just these other kind of miscellaneous tasks, just kind of here and there and everywhere. And so, that's going to be, analyzing some of the different tools and seeing if they're going to be viable, if they're helpful at all. So there's one there in the bottom, this circle city scan tool, and, seeing if there's, gross value added in certain industries and, what recommendations they give. Also looking at, grant and funding options, because obviously it's not free to develop this green economy. So, there needs to be funding options. So being able to look at all of them that are going to be viable for the city of Santa Cruz, as well as that, even just looking at, the economic development board meetings and like their minutes and everything, making sure that Tiffany's kind of up to date with what's going on there. Cause, like she said, she's a team of one. It's really hard for her to, look at all these things. And so making sure that everything's up to date there. And, this is actually what we're working on now is developing and looking at the ecosystem, so the workforce development ecosystem. What aspects of anywhere near Santa Cruz, where are people coming from that are coming into the industry? Where can we identify areas where we can maybe reinforce, and then you can make sure that we're getting people, especially maybe underrepresented populations, into the workforce. And so, that's something that's kind of ongoing. You can see an example there in the bottom right. That's not the one that that we created, but that's just an example of how it's going to end up looking. Next slide. And so, yeah, I'll pass it on to Grant, and he'll talk about his portion with City of Santa Cruz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grant. And I also, of course, worked under Tiffany Wise West with the City of Santa Cruz. So there's two big projects that I kind of worked on in addition to some miscellaneous tasks. So I'm going to start first with the legislation tracking. So if we could go to the next slide. So the legislation tracking project was, as Justin mentioned and as Tiffany mentioned, the Climate Department of Santa Cruz, team of one. So one of the things that Tiffany does not have time to do is to track legislation both at the federal level and the state level to kind of see what's going on and the changes that are happening in politics and with policy that would affect climate policy at the local level. So what I kind of sought out to do was to just put something together that could track these all. And that is a combination of executive orders from the president, departmental changes, stuff that might happen at, say, Department of Energy, or even, Department of Interior, just anything that could affect what we're doing out here. And then, of course, federal legislation, and then California state legislation. And I will point out that on this slide, there's a link to this tracker for when the slides are available after this presentation. So I encourage people to check out that link and view it at their own leisure. Can we please go to the next slide? So these are the kind of the different categories of legislation. So again, this is legislation that could impact anything at the local level, either directly or indirectly. So that could be legislation that say gives money directly to local governments to help combat climate change, or it could be things that are sort of tangential, sort of stuff that may happen with, say, wildfire that maybe doesn't affect local government directly, but still is policy that we would want to be aware of here at the local level. So one of the things I did was I split this into different categories: wildfires, energy, sea level, water, carbon, resiliency, and any combination of these. There's also lots of legislation that doesn't necessarily fit into any of those categories, but I did want to make it so that we had a tracker that was sortable by those categories. And then, of course, you can see for the screenshot, you have the legislation number, the sponsors, the name, and then can we please go to the next slide? And then, current status is over there as well. And then actually, let's go one more slide after this. And then, the the current status of a bill and then the date of the change of the bill. So for instance, if on, April 1st, it was in committee and then on April 15th, it, got out of committee, that'd be something that I would change and make sure it was up to date frequently. And then I put kind of a brief description. One thing that was kind of hard about this project was going through and making sure that it was clear to someone reading the tractor what each bill did. Some of these bills can be pretty complicated and of course pretty long, that's how policy works. So, but that was a good challenge to kind of see what the nuts and bolts were. And then, just putting in additional comments there on the right, such as, other organizations that may support the bill or other organizations that may actually not support the bill. So for instance, you can just kind of see very small on the side that that bill in column number 4 was supported by the Climate Center, but we had other bills that were climate bills that the Climate Center did not support. So that was something we wanted to keep track of too, just see what other organizations were saying about this kind of stuff. Let's go to the next slide. And again, so that tracker is, it's linked in this presentation. So I do encourage people, it's a view only link for the public. So I do encourage people to check it out. And one of the goals with that tracker was to make it so that whoever came after me in this program someone else could update it. And what I wanted to do is, build infrastructure so that, it was a long-term project that could be passed off to other people in the future. So then the second project I worked on here was building decarbonization. And for those that don't know, building decarbonization is the process of decarbing existing building stock. So converting old buildings to make them basically get off of carbon, get off of gas. And this is often, you'll hear this talked about in conjunction with building electrification, which is the process of electrifying current buildings. And sometimes, depending on the context, they're even used interchangeably. Let's go to the next slide. So my task was a subtask of this kind of presentation by 3CE, the Community Choice Energy Agency. And what I was tasked with doing was reviewing market-based solutions, including funding, financing, existing programs. And what I did is I broke this into initiatives, proposals, organizations, and resources. So next slide, please. And this is an example of initiatives. So these are things that Santa Cruz has done some of this already. Looking at what Santa Cruz has done, other local governments within California, what have they done with building decarbonization? So you can see here things like reach code ordinances, electricity rebates, energy and water building performance ordinance. These are all things that we assessed. Is it in the development stage? Is this just an idea? Has it actually been implemented? And if it has been implemented, is there an assessment of how well it actually worked for that city? So that was just one of the many things we kind of wanted to keep track of with this spreadsheet. If we go to the next slide, please. And I also, again, similar to my legislation project, I wanted to make something that laid some groundwork so that someone who came after me could use this document and use it and be able to use it in the future and not have to replicate any of the work that I did. So one of the things was putting in resources. So here we see just a bunch of organizations in California and beyond that are working actively on building decarbonization. And then if we could go to the next slide. This is part of a compilation of, a lot of documents that are current about this work that's being done. You can see here's, stuff from UC Berkeley, stuff from the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Association, the New Buildings Institute. Those are all things that I want to include to make sure that this was a project that someone could build off of into the future. And then next slide, please. So next steps, I'm actually going to extend my internship with the City of Santa Cruz to further work on building decarb because it's a very big project, and I kind of want to see what happens. And then I should note that there were some other miscellaneous projects I did with the city. I also worked on the West Coast adaptation plan. I drafted some letters too, so I'm happy to assist with in my extended internship to assist with any other kind of odds and ends policy projects that come up in the city. And I believe I'm out of time. I would ask if there's any questions, but I am just going to go and hand it to the next person. But if anyone does have any questions, feel free to email me. My email is in this presentation. So thanks once again.
Great. Thanks, Grant, Justin, and Tiffany. And yeah, feel free to drop your questions in the chat as well, and we'll be sure to note them and bring them up again during Q&A. That was all great, all of which I am very sure can be replicated and expanded across the region as we look to rebuilding, as we come out of this this pandemic and economic crises. So thank you both for the work that you're doing with Tiffany, and thank you, Tiffany, for spearheading this. So now we're going to turn it over to Deborah Bradley and Marina Garcia with Driscoll's to say a few words and introduce Mehul. Deborah?
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me okay? Just checking with the remote.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for partnering with us here at Driscoll's. This has been a great project. I can't speak highly enough about Mehul. He's resilient, flexible, and it's something that we really pride here at Driscoll's. So just a little bit of background. My title is Director of Finance and Decision Support here at Driscoll's Global R&D. We're located in Watsonville. Bit of a context, Driscoll's is a $5 billion in revenue global company. We invest quite a bit in our research and development to give consumers the best berries around the world. And so it's a really fun area to work at. Marina works on my team in finance and decision support. The function of our role and what our department is really tasked with is insight and data are key to ensuring we're investing our resources for its highest and best use. We use a return on investment. Mehul will talk a little bit about that in his project, really to prioritize our resources. A lot is talked about these days in environmental sustainability. That's also a #1 priority of Driscoll's. Well, we also look at in finance is not only do activities need to be environmentally sustainable, but we feel economic sustainability also has to be something that's pursued alongside that. And how we accomplish that is by quantifying a lot of our activities. That allows us to understand opportunities that we might be missing, or that we might be allocating our resources for things that could be better used in other areas. So that's a key part for us. Working remote was a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody. But I think Mehul and especially Marina and team are very resilient and tech savvy. So from our standpoint, I didn't see that as a major stumbling block. We'd love to have everybody out in our research center in Watsonville because it's beautiful and it's very interesting. And when things open back up, we plan to do that. I do want to touch on a very interesting part of this project. And for us here at Driscoll's, we, as a global company, diversity and inclusion is a key tenet of ours. And that has been a key area where we're actually able to achieve a lot of innovation and financial returns. On this particular project, quite a bit of the project was done in Spanish. We had to partner with many different areas and different regions. And I really have to give it to Mehul and also Marina as our liaison, that I felt like that was, that worked seamlessly also. And it's a recognition for all of us as we work in this global environment and with people with different cultures. It's really good to model what that looks like to interact and collaborate. I think a lot of times we say you have to go slower to go fast. So that's been a really neat part of this project. Marina, do you want to say a couple words on our focus of the project? Again, it was quantification and measurement of work. Any comments you have there?
Yeah, so our project consisted on creating or discovering the best metrics to measure applied research. And we not only did that, but we learned so much more on the project. So we discovered many more parts of it. We were able to connect it to different areas, different departments. So I'm sure that this work will continue to have positive impacts in the future. So it was really good.
Great. Well, thanks, Deborah and Marina, for joining us today. We're super appreciative of your support and supervision of Mehul. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to him now. So Mehul, whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. Yeah. So, well, first off, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Deborah and Marina, for that introduction. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you guys. And well, my name is Mehul, and I'm a senior at UC Santa Cruz studying environmental studies and economics. I actually applied to be an MBEP ambassador because the work seemed very meaningful, especially at that intern or ambassador level. And it really gave me exposure to skills that I could use in the real world and a lot of really great connections, especially like the work I had done with Driscoll's. And I had two main projects. The first was that ROI analysis with Driscoll's, and the second was working on a return on investment guidebook project with the MBEP Climate Initiative. And I'll first get started on more of the Driscoll side. So can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so with Driscoll's, my chief responsibility was to do ROI analysis on the research side and help find the best metrics for growth, as Marina mentioned. It would help cut costs and increase yields as best as possible. And I did that by reviewing data showing different plant types and soil and substrate and finding the best metric to, help actually implement those better. And we looked at things like dual incentive programs, so growers aren't inconvenienced by new changes and that efficiency improvements still come in. And we looked at like measurements like yields versus cost to further explore that efficiency. And the next step there would be more of farmer implementation and, actually putting the analysis that we did to work on the grower side, which I think will happen hopefully soon enough. And I think I learned a lot working with Driscoll's. The financial side of any business is incredibly important. And I think these are skills that I can take to whatever company I go with after I graduate. Can we go to the next slide, please? And yeah, so the second project I worked on was with MBEP, and we did a return on sustainability investment guidebook. My specific area was in the transportation side and how companies can reduce their carbon footprint. As you can see by the graph on the right, transportation is a very significant amount of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So by companies reducing the amount of emissions they have associated with transportation, we can make a lot of really good headway in combating the climate crisis. So there were a few areas that I looked at in particular. The first was with telecommuting. COVID-19 gave us a very unique opportunity to see the effect of, what happens when everybody stops driving to work. And emissions fell. They actually plummeted despite, energy use at home and stuff like that. Emissions plummeted, and especially on the transportation side. So what I did was look at telecommuting and how remote work, even after the pandemic is over, can help employers and employees because there were financial and environmental benefits for both sides. Another area was with various employee incentive programs. That way employers can actually incentivize their workers to be more sustainable, and it would help save the company money and as well as their employees. And there's a lot of examples, like some companies have free professional demos for creating bike routes to work, or they help subsidize loans for workers to get e-bikes if they're close enough to their offices. So there's a lot of different ways that employers can incentivize their employees to, be more sustainable. On more of the supply chain side, I looked at more sustainable supply transport, especially in new electric vehicles. There's a lot of new technology coming out that's allowing for transport to become sustainable even in high masses. And by electrifying fleets, companies can transport themselves or their goods as sustainable as possible. And because of this technology and government benefits, there's actually a financial reason to do it as well, whether it's with tax credits or the fact that many EVs are just cheaper in the long term than buying, fossil fuel based cars or trucks. And, a lot of these transportation sustainability fusion items really will help local businesses, employees. And when the guidebook is fully finished, it can help companies reduce their environmental impact while also saving money. So it kills two very important birds with one stone. And can I go to the next slide, please? So working with MBEP and Driscoll's has been amazing. I've really enjoyed my work over the past year, and there's so many skills I've learned, like ROI analysis, ROSI research, a lot of career development and networking opportunities, especially with the professional development conferences we've had, and just so much more. And going forward, I'll really remember the network I've created and the skills, I've learned, and put those to very good use as I look to get a career in corporate sustainability. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And on to the next speaker.
Great. Thanks, Mehul, Marina, and Deborah. We're going to go ahead and keep moving on. Excellent work. And yes, Ariana and Tiffany, we will share the complete guidebook with everyone. And the ROSI team will actually present their findings and strategies to the wider community once it's complete. So we'll keep you posted on that. Turning it over to Rafael Hernandez now, who is our housing associate on our housing initiative. Rafa, welcome.
Thank you, Ashley. Great to be here with everyone. Welcome to everyone here. My name is Rafael Hernandez. As Ashley said, I work with MBEP's Housing Initiative. In 2016, MBEP launched the Housing Initiative, and it was to support an increase in the supply of all housing at all income levels in the Monterey Bay region. You've heard the expression, there isn't one silver bullet. That's definitely the case with housing. And just like there isn't one specific medicine for the issue, there isn't one group or sector to deliver that solution either. So our initiative starts with a broad regional coalition of individuals and organizations to advocate for the construction of all types of housing through our MBEP Action Center. And as you know, there's all different types of family makeups. So we need different types of housing, apartments, duplexes, triplexes, everything, all across the board. And we do this through we have three specific ways that we go about it. So we have our advocacy education, we have our housing trust, and we have our employer-sponsored housing work. Through the advocacy education, we work with elected officials, city staff, nonprofit organizations, private industry, all the way down to working with farm worker families and breaking down the housing issues and getting folks to participate specifically in the decision-making process. In our housing trust, we have a $12.1 million housing trust that is backed by the Silicon Valley Housing Trust, which is one of the largest in the country. And that helps to bridge affordable housing projects with the pre-development fees. And our last area, employer-sponsored housing, is really to work with the private sector, such as the ag industry, education, healthcare, folks that their employees' housing situation is really important, because if you're a large industry like medical health insurance industry or education one or agriculture, and your employees are having instability because of housing, it's going to impact your industry. So you can see that we are really looking at it comprehensively. And I'll wrap up my comments and bring it over to the team that you'll be hearing from Kevin in a bit, by saying that we are data-driven and we work to ground our analysis on data. But as you know, data itself, information itself, isn't usually enough to initiate an action. So we really like to take the data and make it actionable. And that could take many different forms. You'll see one form in next minute in which we want to take a big chunk of data that could look hard to understand and navigate through, and pull out what's essential and present it in a way that's actionable, that housing stakeholders can look at and go, oh, and they start making decisions on it and start thinking, maybe I can call this person, this looks interesting. So you'll see that in great detail. I'm really excited for you to listen to Kevin Manzano, who will be taking the mic from me in a second. He'll walk you through this really important task that it seemed like MBEP is the one to go about it. So Kevin, if you're ready, please give the folks the information, the details about what you and I have been working on. And really, Kevin's the one been taking the lead on this. So my hat's off to you, and take it away.
Thank you, Rafa. So I'm just thankful to MBEP for giving me the opportunity to work with Rafa on the what we call the California Housing Surplus Inventory Project. And I did include this slide here to kind of give a definition to what housing surplus means. And the state of California defines it as state-owned real property identified as excess to the programmatic needs of the controlling department is listed online for state use or for sale to local agencies, affordable housing sponsors, and the public pursuant. And basically, it's just a way of saying it's extra properties that the government or the state has that they don't need for their functions, so they're basically surplus. And there's two images, basically this database that we've been working with that has a list of different surplus housing properties, and it's basically an image of the list. And then when you click on one, it'll give you a very specific it'll give you that specific information on every individual property, so you can see like a list of all the characteristics. Next slide, please. And so the goal of this project was to review and analyze this surplus state property to determine potential sites that can be developed by affordable housing developers, and also looked at by housing stakeholders in the Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz Tri-County area. And this project also included transferring that data that I showed you from the state property list into a spreadsheet that categorizes the properties based on specific characteristics. Examples being square footage, city property usage, the owning agency, and also the addresses and all the information necessary for the benefit of housing stakeholders. And the second part of the project included mapping these potential sites, so looking at these properties on Google Maps to promote them based on their potential for housing. So we look at them by focusing on different factors, such as what is the size of the property? Could a residential duplex or something built on a property? Is the site located in a residential area? Does it have easy access to grocery stores, to restaurants, to schools? And is it accessible to main roads for transportation purposes? Next slide, please. And so overall, the total number of properties to evaluate are 2,212, 198 properties in San Benito County, 1,022 properties in Monterey County, and 992 properties in Santa Cruz County. And you can see on the right, that image, that is our spreadsheet that we've been working on. So our goal is to have that ready for these investors and the stakeholders so that they can sort and filter them to their benefit and look for what specific characteristics that they're looking for. And yeah, the purpose for the data collection is to have that document ready for them and make it easier on them instead of having to go to the actual database, which is very archaic, I think, compared to just having everything in one place. And our project so far, we've been able to complete San Benito County to completely. We have all of our notes on these properties, our approvals on them, or our disapproval of certain properties. And the next steps is to start mapping these Monterey counties and have all those notes for these stakeholders to see what properties we approve of and which ones we don't approve of for these housing projects. And that's it for this one. So I will pass it on to the next group. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Rafa and Kevin. And I imagine the data will be shared with our counties and city staff as well for them to see what's available. Cool.
Correct. That's the next phase.
Awesome. Great work. So now on to Miss Ashley Paulsworth, the Sustainability Program Manager with the County of Monterey. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, can you hear me?
Thanks for joining us. Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much to all of the ladies that interned with me this year. I had quite a few interns. When Ashley first reached out to me about this initiative, I had about 7 or 8 project ideas that I had been kind of cultivating. And so it was really great timing for me to be able to bring on some student ambassadors and have them get working. So, and also some background for me. So at the county, we didn't have a kind of working sustainability program until I came on board in February of last year. So that was, it was about 8 months that I had been navigating the system at the county and trying to figure out where things had been left off in the sustainability program and where we needed to go. And so we are catching up, and without the help of these interns, I don't think that any of the projects that they worked on would have really received the momentum that they did. And I'm really, really grateful that they were able to help us to get our hands around some of these really, deep and complicated topics, and help us to understand, locally what we're looking at so that we could move things forward. And so we have 3 different projects that were worked on this year. All of them, well, no, that's not true. So one of them focused internally, and some of them focused a little more externally and broad. And I will say that the scopes definitely evolved. And so I really appreciate everyone kind of being flexible and being able to change directions during the project and keep things moving. So I'm going to introduce everyone real quickly. So Sabra, she was our zero waste intern, and she'll be graduating from Cabrillo College this month and transferring to UC Santa Barbara for the coming fall quarter, and she's going to be double majoring in environmental studies and feminist studies there. Viviana was worked on our carbon farms and smart agriculture research, and she's going to be graduating from CSUMB with a degree in agribusiness. Miranda Sampson also worked on the carbon farms and smart agricultural project with Viviana, and she also is getting a BA in agribusiness from CSUMB and will be interning this summer with Tanamira and Antle as an HR data analyst. And then also Julie, who has been working with me since November, so on an extended internship. I really appreciate you putting in that extra effort, Julie. Julie is an MA candidate for International Environmental Policy and Sustainability Management at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, and she will be working with the UNFPA this summer. So thanks a lot, and I'm not sure who's first. Perfect, okay, Sabra, so thank you, and take it away.
Right. Thanks, Ashley. Like Ashley said, my name is Sabra Carmen. I'm currently a 3rd-year student at Cabrillo College, studying liberal arts and sciences. I applied to the Student Ambassador Program through MBEP because I was really interested in meeting new people and gaining experience working with sustainability and climate action planning. Conveniently enough, I was matched with Monterey County Zero Waste Initiative, and I've really enjoyed my time here. I've learned a lot about local government, state policy, and zero waste in the county. I've been working on their zero waste initiative as their climate action plan tech assistant for this semester, and I will be closing out because I will be transferring. I'm really excited to see where their project goes. Next slide, please. So the objective of this project was to work with the County of Monterey to identify a pathway to zero waste through understanding and refining purchasing practices and revising end-of-life pathways for waste. The first step of the project was to compare best practices and current county practices to see what practices the county was doing and what practices they should be doing to be the most sustainable and compliant with state legislation. The second step was to understand upcoming and potential legislation, such as the Extended Producer Responsibility and SB 1383. Step 3 was to recommend best practices for implementation in Monterey County to ensure that they are in compliance with policy and they are optimizing their sustainability. Next slide, please. This is a sample of the best practices that we assembled. The title is a hyperlink. It doesn't look like it, but it is if anyone wants to check out the document and see everything that we have. This is just a few of many practices, first of which is to establish a zero waste training module through their county LMS. Monterey County does not have this yet, but is something they are working on. It is a very high priority. Another is to monitor county purchasing to meet green purchasing goals. Monterey County is currently doing this. It is also a very high priority. Next is to establish green business programs to incentivize sustainability amongst local businesses. Monterey County is doing this and is middle priority. Another one is to establish edible food recovery programs. This is coming soon, as it is something that Monterey County is working on. It's a very high priority as it has to do with upcoming legislation SB 1383, which has to do with organic waste disposal. And the last one is to provide recycling bins and composting bins in every county building. Monterey County currently is doing this and is a very high priority also because of SB 1383. Next slide, please. The first piece of legislation that I mentioned was the extended producer responsibility. And it is the extension of responsibility of producers and all entities involved in the product chain to reduce the cradle-to-cradle impacts of a product and its packaging. The primary responsibility lies with the producer or brand owner who makes design and marketing decisions. Next slide, please. Some policy goals of EPR is to consider the life cycle impact of all materials in the waste stream. Also to improve waste management, such as source reduction, product reusability, waste collection, and recycling. Also to improve product sustainability, such as using less packaging and ensuring all materials used in a product are recyclable. Also to reduce solid waste, energy and water consumption, toxic materials, and greenhouse gas emissions. And lastly, to promote a cradle-to-cradle system. Next slide, please. Another piece of legislation that is very important that I mentioned before is the Senate Bill 1383, also referred to as SB 1383, which seeks to reduce short-lived climate pollutant emissions such as methane and black carbon, and to reduce organic waste disposal while also improving organic waste diversion. SB 1383 is very significant because, as you can see in the infographic below, California disposed approximately 27 million tons of organic waste in 2017. And that's a lot. And as organic waste is disposed of in a landfill, it breaks down anaerobically and produces greenhouse gases like methane. So SB 1383's mission is to cut those emissions and work on proper organic waste disposal to prevent those emissions. Next slide, please. Some preparation that I worked with on the county for SB 1383 was first we looked at county buildings by employee population and how many cafeterias and break rooms they have to get insight on where composting services are needed most. So what buildings have the most people and how many services they will need. We also met with environmental health and discussed waste collection services, see which services are available within city limits and within the county. We also reviewed CalRecycle's Article 12 procurement of recovered organic waste product section to understand organic waste requirements to ensure that we are in compliance with SB 1383. Next slide, please. Next steps in future projects for Monterey County would be to evaluate county purchasing data and waste trends and recommend ways to reduce waste through changing purchasing practices, such as using programs like DocuSign and WriteFax and purchasing reusable products instead of single-use products. Also to do waste bin inventory and deployment, see how many waste bins are available and where they are most needed. Also to do customize a training module and work with human resources. Also to improve education and outreach for SB 1383 food recovery organics, as that is a requirement for SB 1383. All right, so that was my project that I worked on with Monterey County. If anyone has any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll get to them. Next we have Miranda and Viviana.
Hi folks, my name is Miranda Sampson and I am a current junior and soon to be senior at CSUMB. My major is business administration with a concentration in agribusiness, and I'm really interested in the sustainability side of agriculture and farming practices, which is why I applied to be an intern with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership to work on their climate and sustainability initiatives. I got matched with the Healthy Soils and Smart Ag project with Ashley Paulsworth and my fellow intern, Viviana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Viviana. I'm also a business major with my concentration in agribusiness, and I'm going to be graduating from CSU MB this semester. And I joined MBEP because I was really interested in what actions can be taken in the agriculture sector in terms of sustainability. And I was able to learn a lot through this internship about conservation practices available. Next slide. So for our project, it was the Healthy Soils and Smart Ag project. The objective was to determine the healthy soils practices that are most commonly being applied in Monterey and develop communication materials to describe the benefits of the practice. So our first step was to research, and we did this by reviewing the Healthy Soils awarded, as well as determining local practices through the Healthy Soils grants. We also reviewed carbon benefits, and we did this using the comment tool for the CDFA, and as well as economic benefits and costs, which we'll further discuss in the next slides. And we also attended Healthy Soils listening sessions, and we were able to network with local experts to learn more about the needs and gaps in technical assistance for healthy soils practices. For example, we got to meet with Pam Crone at the Monterey Bay Sanctuary, and we also worked with Laura Murphy from the RCD. And the next step would be to develop the communications materials, and we did this by identifying the best practices based on local specifications, carbon and economic benefits, and created our draft brochures. Next slide, please.
So the first agricultural practice that we identified as being really important was the application of compost. So in this graphic here, you can see an example of the carbon cycle and how it works in our environment. And basically the carbon cycle is the way that carbon travels through our environment and atmosphere, where carbon is essential to plant growth. And through grazing animal waste and poor agricultural practices, gases have been released into the atmosphere, often as harmful greenhouse gases. However, with the application of compost on various crops, we can see multiple benefits. For example, from the application of compost, the process of carbon sequestration can take place, allowing CO2 to be captured from the air and stored in the soil. The now healthier soil from the compost application increases vegetation production and carbon soil sequestration due to the compost's continual decomposition, releasing nutrients into the soil. In addition, Earthbound Farm, a farm in Carmel, has found that when using compost, they save water by increasing the capacity that their soil has to retain water, which lowers their costs of using water. Also, composting in Monterey is expected to reduce 2 to 5 metric tons of CO2 per year, which is equivalent to 4,000 to 11,000 pounds of CO2 per year. This is according to the Comet Planner made by the USDA and the CDFA, which is linked there if you want to play around with it. It's actually pretty cool. And of course, with the application of organic matter, there must be some level of risk management, ideally to prevent contamination such as E. coli and Salmonella. Whether you get compost from a certified facility or make your own, it's important to keep sanitary operations and ensure safe procedures. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the brochure that I made on compost application. Basically, it just says all of what I just told you in a fun way. I decided to make the brochure because I thought it'd be visually appealing and an easy way to get the information across to people. And just to conclude my part of the project, this internship really helped me learn how to effectively research information and then how to take all that information and decide what's most useful and important. And of course, I learned a lot about sustainable farming practices and would love to continue to work with local agriculture companies exploring the application of these practices. Next slide, please.
So another application that we found was important to highlight was cover crops. And this is for the purpose of planting plants to cover the soil rather than to be harvested. Some benefits include improved soil health, and this would include food web benefits for organisms within the soil, And this practice adds carbon and other beneficial nutrients important for crop production, which can be shown on the image to the right of what that process might look like. It also slows erosion and pollution, and this would reduce greenhouse gas emissions due to the decrease in water runoff because cover crops are able to provide soil stability because of the plant roots. And this economically could potentially reduce fertilizer, labor, and fuel costs for farmers. Some risks associated might be high startup costs, which can be due to the purchase of additional equipment if necessary, as well as unfamiliar additional management practices, which just can be implementation to new practices that can increase labor. Next slide, please. And this is a completed draft deliverable I developed describing the cover crops, and it highlights the benefits and additional information about the application. This process has been really important to me just because it's allowed me to learn more about all of the conservation practices available under the Healthy Soils program. And I think that it's going to be a great way to continue to take this into my future career and other jobs that might be in this field. Thank you. Next slide.
So as for our next steps, the overall goal of this project that can continue to be worked on after Viviana and I is to estimate the amount of carbon being sequestered through conservation agriculture practices in Monterey County, and to assist farmers and ranchers interested in learning more about these practices. Steps towards this goal could include expanding on the healthy soils practices that we identified as being good fits for Monterey County, such as hedgerow planting and conservation cover. And it would also be great to continue to identify farmers and ranchers in Monterey County that are interested in carbon sequestration and work with them to implement these farming practices. And that is all for our project, so thank you. And next we have Julie with fleet electrification.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Stazik. I'm finishing my first year of graduate school at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. I'm studying international environmental policy and specializing in sustainability management. And I applied to be a student ambassador because I really wanted to work outside of my school and learn about sustainability initiatives in the county. And I was matched with the Fleet Electrification Project because I'm very interested in the significant growth of EV sales and bold policy changes to encourage the growth of EV adoption. Next slide, please. So I'm very excited to work on this project due to transportation being the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in California, and light-duty vehicles being the largest source of transportation sector CO2 emissions. And also learning that EVs will soon cost the same as gas cars, with lithium-ion batteries becoming more and more cheap. Next slide, please. So I worked alongside Ashley Pulsworth and the fleet manager, Rich Buell, to support transitioning the current fleet portfolio to an all-electric fleet by 2035. I developed a spreadsheet model that took the fleet data from all 26 departments and assessed the near, mid, and long-term switches of vehicles, and compared the total cost of ownership for internal combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles, and found the lifetime greenhouse gas emissions from each vehicle. Next slide, please. So as you can see, there's two different graphs we're looking at here, and in all 26 departments, the county currently has 1,040 vehicles. So for this study, I classified all vehicles into 7 different categories, which include van, truck, SUV, sedan, hybrid, EV, and special. And special included vehicles such as tractors and crawlers. And so the majority of the county's vehicles, as you can see, are trucks. And the county does have a considerable amount of hybrid vehicles, as well as several electric vehicles that are mainly Nissan Leafs. Next slide, please. So currently the county has 153 hybrids and 10 electric vehicles. And this mainly includes Toyota Prius hybrids, Nissan Leaf EVs, Ford C-Max hybrids, and Ford Fusion hybrids. Next slide, please. And there are currently 168 hybrid sedans and SUVs and 16 different departments that are near-term switch vehicles, which means they're 8 years or older. So the county currently has mainly ICE ICE sedan vehicles that are primarily Dodge Chargers and ICE SUVs that are primarily Ford Escape all-wheel drive. So I compared the total cost of these two cars to their EV equivalent comparison, which would be an Nissan Leaf and a Hyundai Kona. Next slide, please. So the total cost of ownership that I did in this calculation represents the value of the car over its lifetime. So these calculations are based on the vehicles mentioned in the previous slide. But the way I found the total cost of ownership is, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, it's the retail price plus the lifetime cost of gas or power plus the maintenance cost minus the depreciation or salvage value. So for this analysis, I found the lifetime cost of gas and power based on the price of electricity and gas in California, and made the assumption that each vehicle is going to drive 120,000 miles over the span of its lifetime, assuming the lifetime of the vehicle would be 8 years. And the lifetime greenhouse gas emissions were calculated from using the Department of Energy's website and were based on Monterey County's location and grid. So these greenhouse gases include not only just carbon dioxide, but also nitrous oxide and methane from upstream and tailpipe emissions. So as you can see highlighted in green, the total cost of ownership for electric vehicles are the cheapest for both sedan and SUV compared to the hybrid and internal combustion engine vehicles. And these numbers will only get more competitive and decrease with time. So going forward, it's based on these calculations, it's a worthy investment for the county to purchase EVs for at least sedans and SUVs and replace the current hybrids they have to electric vehicles. And the county mainly has trucks, and soon there will be competitive prices for electric trucks, but that can be a part of their fleet portfolio, but we're going to have to wait a couple more years for those costs to be a little bit more competitive. And the Sheriff Health and Social Services Department have the most opportunity for most near-term favorable switch vehicles, which is they have SUVs, hybrids, sedans where they need to switch over and be purchased. So they have the most opportunity to have those be electrified. And overall, this experience has been really great just due to this field is growing so rapidly, and having talked to professionals in the field and my renewable energy professor, among other people in Monterey, just having the skills to assess the total cost of ownership is really important and something people are doing for mobility everywhere. So I've really appreciated this experience and learned a lot, and excited to hopefully see myself potentially working in the field of mobility in the future. So thank you, and I'll pass it over to, I think, Ariana.
Great, thanks, Julie. And God, so much good information. Thanks for sharing all of that, you guys. And like Tiffany, Ashley's a one-woman show, so we're super grateful you saw the value in partnering with us and working with not just one, but several interns on these super important projects to the county. So great job, ladies. Last but not least, we have Ariana Green, Senior Transportation Planner at the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, who worked with Hazel Choi. Over to you, Ariana.
Great, thank you, Ashley. And before I launch into this, just wanted to thank you and Haley for including TAMC in this awesome internship program. It's been a really wonderful experience, and look forward to continuing to participate. So a little bit about TAMC and a little background on our project. The Transportation Agency for Monterey County we're a small but mighty government agency, and we plan for and fund transportation projects across Monterey County, and we also implement several programs that focus on behavior change, and Going Through One is one of those programs. And as Mehul and Julie presented, reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector is hugely important in addressing climate change. And that's one of the main goals of our Go 831 program. And we reduce greenhouse gas emissions and traffic by encouraging people to not drive alone so much to work and school, And so if the Driscoll's people are still on the line, shameless plug, we'd love to work with you in Monterey County to develop a smart commute programming for your employees. And so through our program, we promote things like teleworking, and as awful as this pandemic has been, it's also presented a huge opportunity for our program because all of a sudden many employers who were reluctant before the pandemic to allow teleworking were now forced to do it and forced to support it, really. And so we wanted to kind of take advantage of that a little bit, to be blunt, and we also anticipated that the shelter-in-place restrictions would lighten up likely this year, and so we really wanted to reach out to employers before work sites fully reopen to find out their attitudes around teleworking and see if there's been a change, seeing if there's still support for it, or if everyone is just like had it with teleworking and is not interested anymore. So we just wanted to know how people felt about it, and then also ask questions to help us understand if there are any resources we could provide employers to support continued teleworking. And so that's where Hazel came in, and she helped us design a really great telework survey for employers. And she was great, and I've heard a lot of this in previous presentations, that there was a lot of flexibility, and so Hazel was very flexible with us too, because she signed up for working with just us in Monterey County, and this project turned into a regional project, which I think made it better, but it was still a little more work. So thank you, Hazel, for being flexible and going with the flow. So we, in addition to helping us develop the telework survey, Hazel is also helping us develop some policy templates and tools that we can offer to employers. And she's also putting together a report that we'll be able to share out publicly across the region with showing the survey results. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Hazel to present on the project.
Thanks, Ariana. Hi, everyone. I'm Hazel, and I'm a graduate student studying urban planning. And I applied for ambassador intern at MBEP because I want to know more about my communities where I live as a seaside resident. I have worked on telework policy with Ariana and Tracy at MBEP and TMC, and conducted telework survey design, and I also am participating in developing a telework toolkit for the Monterey Bay region. Next slide, please. Remote working, also known as like telecommuting, teleworking, or working from home, is like basically employers allow employees to perform their usual job duties at an approved alternative location. So the COVID pandemic has led to increased teleworking everywhere, including the Monterey Bay region. So our main question is that, has the pandemic changed the way our region works? If so, how? So our project came from that question. So first of all, why telework is important? We understand telework trends across the region everywhere. So we are trying to encourage telework where possible as a feasible option, because telework is an essential key to reduce greenhouse gas emission and traffic congestion. So before the pandemic, TMC was already promoting telework as one option of Go 831. It's a smart commute program designed to reduce the number of vehicles on the road and in parking lots during the busy travel times. So we conducted employer telework survey to collect their responses for telework, like how much they support telework or not, if not, why, something like that. So these survey outcomes will be a foundation for developing a telework toolkit. Next slide, please. This survey was region-wide approach in partnership with TMC, MBEP, Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission, City of Santa Cruz, and San Bernardino Council of Governments. And the survey was open from March 23 to April 23, about like a month. And after cleaning the data, survey data, total number of responses is 139, and Monterey for 54, San Francisco for 6, and Santa Cruz for 44. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share some brief key findings of the survey. First of all, we found more than half of the organization already have teleworking policy. So we are planning to reach out the organization that responded do not have telework policy not yet, in order to encourage them to adapt the policy. Also, 80% of respondents say they will support teleworking after the pandemic. But the most barriers to adopting telework policy are video conference fatigue, which already we are doing, and technical issues or lack of sufficient equipment. Next slide, please. So this graph shows that approximately what percentage of employees currently teleworking or expect to continue teleworking at least one day a week over the next year. And we realized that compared to today, employers plan to increase the number of employees teleworking at least one day a week from 10 to 50%. However, if they already have over 50% of employees teleworking, they would like to reduce the percentage over the next year. But for the position that can be done remotely, employers allow employees to work from home mostly 3 or 5 days. Next slide, please. So following the previous question, the reasons the maximum number of days per week, they allow teleworking because the telework has high productive work and work can be done remotely. But most people also point out that sometimes they need time for team building or increasing cohesion for employees in person. And I also mentioned before, but there are some obstacles to implement teleworking is leadership support or fairness between employees. So this is another issue that we have to address in the toolkit part. In conclusion, most employers are positive about telework, but it seems that for a day or 2 days, and based on the better equipment and broadband, employers also want to meet employees sometimes because for management and communication with employees. And based on this survey outcome, we are going to develop telework toolkit for employers with office-based employees or employees who are able to work effectively away from an organization work site. Through this project, I was able to learn technical skill like creating and designing or analyzing survey. And above all, I learned alternatives to reduce VMT, which is a huge issue in CA to meet the SB 32 goal. I was really excited and grateful to participate in this project, and I will pass to Ashley. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ariana, and good job, Hazel. Super critical survey and research and analysis for the entire region. So thank you so much for getting on board with this. Now I'm going to turn it over to Haley Mears, our program manager for MBEP's Workforce Development Initiative, to share some resources with you all. Haley?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to close us out with a couple resources for any employers who have joined us today or are going to watch this as a recording. So as you can see from all of our wonderful student ambassador presentations, the value of hosting interns and providing work-based learning experiences and projects for them to work on that correlate with their academic studies and help provide them that edge to get more work experience and preparation for their job search and graduation. So thank you everyone for presenting today. We have a couple resources that are affiliated with our workforce development initiative with MBEP. The first one is the Monterey Bay Internships. As a reminder, it's a free portal for employers to post local internship recruitments for local college students. So this is a portal that's accessible to the community. College level students can apply and employers can post their opportunities and manage their recruitment right through the portal. We also have developed an employer toolkit that is accessible from that site, and it's a pretty comprehensive guide. If you're new to setting up an internship program and have no idea where to get started, this guide kind of walks you through step by step how to set up a program very intentionally and provides a lot of resources on how to do it with sample documents that you can use. And we even added a new section that really is geared towards working with interns remotely and also thinking about diversity and inclusion and working with students from different populations. As Ashley already mentioned, this is our MBEP Student Ambassador Program, and I've provided a link here with more information that links out to that program. You can learn more about how we've structured it. And a couple of other resources I just want to mention for employers, opportunities to partner with UC Santa Cruz to work with their students in field studies. That's students earning academic credit for an internship, and they call it field study, so it's a little bit confusing, but there are several different departments where students in the majors can take a field study course, and then they would intern with an employer. And you can find those by Google searching or looking through their websites. Also, you're welcome to contact me directly and I can connect you to the folks up there. There's a program called Federal Work Study that UCSC runs, which is also available for nonprofit employers. They can apply to be a work study employer, and there's a wage subsidy program where students receive some of their pay through their financial aid package. So it's a way to pay interns, which is very important, paying interns. But if you're an employer who maybe can't foot the whole bill, this is a program that allows you to pay just a percentage of their wages. There's also some programs for professional career development. This is a program where students get a scholarship towards their internship and they can work with employers off campus. And then CSUMB Monterey Bay also has a similar program to field study. However, they call it service learning. So again, the keywords that you want to be aware of, it's not really called an internship, it's called service learning, and you can apply to be a community partner. And again, the students earn academic credit for the work that they do with you. And then there's some other field-based experience programs, which I've linked all of these here. So I just want you guys to be aware that there's a lot of different ways to work with interns. And of course, we're happy to help you get connected to those programs and contacts. And let me just switch us to the next slide here. Yeah, so I just want to close out with saying congratulations to all of our interns. You've done a fabulous job presenting. If you have any questions, if you're an employer, you have any questions about how you can help support or mentor interns, Ashley and I are happy to connect with you. Our contact information is here. And if you're a student and you're interested in becoming an MBEP student ambassador, again, you can also reach out to us. So if there's anything that you take away from today, is just know that we're available as a resource and we're happy to help connect you guys to opportunities, whether you're a student or an employer. And I'll leave it with that. Ashley, if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, that's great, Haley. Thanks. So we have a few more minutes for questions. If anyone here has any, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. Otherwise, just so you know, this is being recorded and we will do a recap in our next Workforce Development Regional Report with a link to the recording, as well as this slide deck. So like Haley mentioned, you'll have access to all these links. So anyone have any questions? Great job, everyone. It's been so fun and really fulfilling and meaningful to work with each and every one of you. I have a ton of questions, but definitely want to open up the floor to anyone else.
Well, if you have any questions, you can always follow up and email us directly at the emails listed here. So I think with that, we can just close out and give people back, a couple extra minutes of their time.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we're really excited to just see how the sustainability of these projects and how they take shape and evolve over time. And just know that it's super, significant and impactful to our entire region, and is really help advancing diverse solutions. So wonderful job. We'll be in touch. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.